to keep right.
Hey, what's good, everyone? Welcome to Prepare to Go There, the most overlooked and underrated coaching conversation on the internet. That's my opinion, but I'm just convinced we need to be focusing on the future today. No one else is going to be putting in that necessary and unnoticed work. And so that's why we're here to keep each other company as we go on this journey together. My name is Peter, and it has been a blast and a blessing to go on this extended coaching journey with each of you. So many friends and leaders. You are crushing it in so many spaces, and I'm inspired by you. That's why I gotta put in the work to keep up with all of the progress that this amazing community is making. And we're in a really fun coaching conversation today. It's all about time budgeting. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a little bit, but welcome to the Future Frontier. It's Wednesday, September 29, 2021. I want to dive right into the conversation. And if you've been on this coaching journey, you already know what it's about. So I'm not going to go through the whole thing. Prepare to Go There is about self-leadership. A lot of people don't know how to lead others into a better future because they don't know how to lead themselves there first. And this is something that we don't talk about a lot because there's a lot of emphasis on the public side of leadership, and that's great. But we have to stay focused on the personal and the private side of leadership as well. And honestly, I don't think other people are going to have that conversation for you. You have to be leading in that conversation yourself. You have to be leading yourself and then going in a direction and going at a pace that other people want to be a part of. And so really the remedy and the call to action for us is to go on a daily coaching journey, right? To go into a lifestyle of preparation, which is the remedy to a lifetime of procrastination. And here we are putting in the work, keeping the future on our front burner. Again, it's just another Wednesday for everybody else, but it is an opportunity to get away and to get ahead for us. And so this is our opportunity to just work on ourselves and believe that when we show up, we can show up ready. I've been asking the question, how do we lead ourselves and stay focused on the future with intentionality and integrity? That's pretty important. I don't want to just win if I lose. I don't want to win publicly if I lose everything in the end. And I am very encouraged when you think about this idea that you don't need other people's permission or supervision to make personal projects, personal progress on the things that matter to you. Let me say that again. Try again. You don't need other people's permission or supervision to make personal progress on the things that matter to you. You can put in the work. You can be growing in leaps and bounds. And I want to get very practical today and help you with time budgeting. Time budgeting is just a tool. It's not everything. It can be used as a diagnostic tool. It can be used as a decision-making tool. But it is something that we need whenever we are really in that go mode and we're making decisions. Time budgeting, like I mentioned before, saves more than time. It will save you confidence and it will save your credibility. Because if you keep wasting time, losing time, forgetting what time it is, that's going to have an internal toll on your confidence. There's going to be this sense of inferiority. You're going to wonder if it's even worth it to try to muster yourself up again. Equally, it can have a toll on your credibility. You can make all of these speeches, you can throw out all of these great ideas, you can be railing on other people, but if you're not leading yourself, and if you're not able to make estimates on your own time, then people are going to be wondering what's going on. This is very personal. This is very important to me. I've alluded to this, but we're working on a really fun project right now for our church community, and I'm telling you, the project has been fun, but it's been taking a lot of time. And so this is kind of an active case study for me as I'm working on the project, but I'm also working on the process of how would I use time budgeting to better tackle a bigger project. And that's where we're going to get very actionable today. Yesterday was about kind of getting us out of calendar debt. And it's this idea that you have to plug the holes in the boat. You have to stop the leaks in the boat before you launch out and do something big and do something fun. You have to realize that there are areas where we're losing time. We're feeling spent, and we're being spent in 1,001 little tasks. So we're not noticing the toll that is going on us personally and that's going out of our time when we make all of these small choices. 5 minutes on this, 10 minutes on that, 30 minutes on that, commute time to that. All this stuff is happening, and we don't catch it because our lives are increasingly more fragmented. So we're not catching the bigger picture. We're not zooming out and seeing how all of these choices are actually playing together in the direction our time is going. So we've already talked about stopping the leaks in the boat. We've already talked about how do you identify where you feel spent and then collecting those gains so you can reinvest that time into better activities. You can make better decisions. I don't want to be spent in 1,000 ways. A little, just a little thing here, there. And then I feel so spent. I want to be deeply, fully invested in things that matter, things that are going to multiply my future. No one says, oh, I found the 25th hour. That's my secret to success. I found a way to get another hour. If you just cross this time zone, there's actually 25 hours over here in this city. There's no place like that. Every time zone that I know of is 24 hours a day. I was just talking to a dear friend, a buddy, and he's in Nigeria. All right. He's got the same 24 hours as I do. I think it's pretty cool that he actually lives in the future in comparison to me. But nonetheless, you still have the same 24 hours. So how do we multiply that time? Realize that there are things we're doing today that are going to have a negative ripple effect if we allow them, right? The default of every day goes into delay and decay. If we do nothing, if we don't get involved, if we don't get engaged, if we don't exercise our God-given creativity and intentionality, things will just run rampant. Things will just bleed out into anarchy, disorder. But we have an opportunity as image bearers of God to use that creativity, to use that intentionality to be redemptive, to actually see our time be useful, to be valuable, to do great stuff. And it can actually have a positive ripple effect, a net gain, so to speak, a compounding interest, so to speak. So I'm not just talking about little hacks. I think it's amazing that we should be learning about practical things like automation and systems and delegation. Yes. But if that's your whole system, just all the external stuff, you're not dealing with the biggest leak in the boat, which could be a blind spot in yourself. You may be the one making the wrong choices about where you put your time, where you're physically at work, but you're mentally somewhere else. You're physically with your family, but you're distant and you're discouraged and defeated. And that becomes a huge leak in the boat. That is wasting time, wasting energy. And so there are choices, there are habits, there are rhythms, there are systems that you and I can identify today, that we can work on today, that we can plant today, that will actually create a positive ripple effect that goes far and wide into the future. I'm thinking of a quote from Martin Luther, one of the church reformers, and he said, "If I knew with certainty that the end of the age was tomorrow, I would still plant an apple tree today." I think that's amazing. That idea of investing in your future and realizing that time is a multiplier by necessity. Time is essentially a multiplier. You're not just looking for little tricks to add up a few minutes. Time itself is already a multiplier. It is a magnifier. If you do nothing, if you entertain laziness, it will multiply. That laziness will multiply over time. If you go on a lifestyle of entitlement, that entitlement will multiply over time. Whatever you sow, you will grow. And then you're going to have to reap whatever you're sowing. So we just want to be aware of where we are paying our attention. Because if you become too spent, emotionally too fragmented, right? If you attempt too much, you achieve too little. And if you cannot pay attention to the right things today, you've probably overcommitted yourself. You're probably spent. You're probably too overextended. And wherever you're overextended, you're likely on track to be underproducing. So we have to prune back again and again. We get a simple tool like time budgeting to actually see, to actually visualize where is our time actually going? Where is the time actually going? And then how can we better steward that time? I didn't say predict the future. I didn't say predict how everything's going to go. But you and I can steward time well, and we can number our days in a way that brings lasting value. So I want to get very practical. We've identified leaks in the boat. Now we're going to reinvest it in things for the future. I want to talk about the first case study that time budgeting works really well with, and that is when you need to finish that big goal. That big goal. Go ahead and put in the chat one of your big goals right now. What would be one of the big goals that you have for the future? I'm going to give it a second. It might be like me. I'm working on a book project right now. Sarah Joy said she's making a course. Right now, Sarah Joy and I, we've been working on a course, a master class. It's a lot of fun. Maybe it's a health goal. Maybe it's a financial goal. Maybe it's a travel goal. Maybe it's a professional goal. We have goals all the time. Our roles inspire us to make goals. And so, how do you finish a big goal when it doesn't fit in a a short day? You got a project that would probably take upwards of 30 or 40 or 50 hours, and then you only have maybe 1, 2, 3 hour windows in every day. How do you begin to break that down to begin to understand how you're going to strategically make progress on big goals and finish them on time? You have to employ some time budgeting. So I'm going to refer to a little tool that I'm working with called the work wedge. The work wedge. And the idea is pretty simple. A wedge, is something maybe like a doorstop. If you have a doorstop and you put it under the door, it's small at one point and then it gets bigger or thicker at the other point. And so you kind of like jam it in at the small part and you just keep pushing on it until it gets bigger and bigger. So when we think about big goals, we have to start small. We have to use the work wedge, whether we're talking about a focus session of 90 minutes or whether we're talking about a goal setting for 90 days, a goal setting cycle of 90 days. I like to focus in 90-minute work sessions and 90-day goal setting cycles. 90 minutes, 90 days. Maybe there's some science floating around about this to back up my intuition, but I like the sound of that. It's got a nice ring to it. It makes sense to me. 90 minutes to focus on work, 90 days to keep track and make goals or update goals as we go. So we start small. We have to be willing to start where we are. We get going and then we get better. And over time, we're going to make bigger investments of time as we go. So the goal is we're going to be intentional about starting immediately. Whenever you get a goal, whenever you see a landmark in the future, you see something on the calendar, you put it on the calendar as soon as you can see it, as soon as it happens, and then you have to take action. There's so many times we put things on the calendar and then we procrastinate till the last week to actually start up on that calendar commitment. If you know about a calendar commitment for 1 month, you should be thinking, working, talking, planning, preparing for it for 1 month or 29 days. If you know about something 6 months in advance, then you have 6 months to be working on it. So many times we just say, oh, I'll just put it on the calendar and then I'll work on it later down the road. No, it's on your calendar now because you actually have to start making time blocks in the calendar this week to research that thing, to make plans, to have conversations, to take preliminary action, to pre-work or rework in multiple touch points until you get to a certain stage or a later step. So I'm learning by experience and observation that if it's on the calendar, it's kind of like it's going to apply to both your macro view and your micro view at the same time. because whatever big goal I have in my head, it should be showing up on my calendar that week. If we say we value it, we have to schedule it in. Otherwise, we're just kidding ourselves. We say we like running, but we're not making time and space to put on the shoes, to go walk, to go run. And this is a constant reminder. So even if we just make space in the calendar in the week for the roles that we want, because maybe being married is not a project. It may feel like it, but it's not. Being married is a privilege. Being married is a role. So I don't really know what the project is. I just know I want to develop that role. I want to develop that relationship with my wife. So I just make time for that. I factor that in. I have other roles. And so I just want to make time to either grow in those roles by reading, learning, getting coaching, or by doing work that relates to that role. But you also will have goals associated with those roles. So I need time in my week, on my calendar, in my schedule for both the roles where I'm just being Peter, just showing up, doing doing whatever happens, but it's within the intentionality, it's within the design of realizing this is the time and space to focus on this side of my life. But then I'll also have goals attached to those roles, and they need time as well. Intentional time to stay motivated, to get sharper, to plan, prepare, to execute, to fail forward. I need time just to be in that space. And one of the things I like to do is when I look at a time budget, I want to name the projects, literally name them. So many times our roles are not clear. Where do you actually pin down one of your roles? You're kind of always flowing through them. They're very fluid. Roles are seasonal, or roles are relational. It's hard to say, okay, for these few seconds or days, this is it, and then it's over. No, it's ongoing. And you don't want that thinking to carry over into your projects. Your projects need to be clear. Your projects need to be structured. Your projects need to be really a point of ownership for you. That's why I like mind mapping, because I can draw out in a simple diagram my roles and the attached goals, and I name them. And it's not just like brainstorming session. You can have so many ideas, so many passions, so many dreams, so many frustrations, and you just start putting it all down there on your mind map, and you actually think that you're going to fit all of that into your time budget. You only have 24 hours a day. You only have 168 hours a week. You only have, 52 weeks a year. You only have so much time, and you think all that stuff that you've been kind of putting out on the mind map is going to fit. We don't understand there's a work wedge. Things can start small in our thinking, but then it grows over time. And when we're trying to get work done, we can actually use that same principle and just get enough motivation to start, and then unleash the power of personal momentum to get to the finish line. You'll never have enough motivation to finish at the start. So you just get the motivation you need to start, and then you find the rest of the motivation you need on the way. So let's recap and get into time budgeting a big goal. We've been identifying big goals. Step 1, stop the leaks in the boat. You have to really deal with whatever is wasting your time, draining your energy, because all you will do is burn more time. You'll be burning on both ends of the candle, so to speak. You'll be waking up earlier, staying up later, and wasting time in between. Whenever you create a clear schedule for yourself, you're saying, I want quality time, not just quantity in the time. I talked about time inflation. It takes more and more time to do less. How can we make, I was even challenged in my own prayer time. I was asking myself, okay, I have a value to pray a long time, but even if I only had 30 minutes, how could I make that as effective, as present, meaningful, open as possible? So make the time blocks or the spaces in your day as effective as possible. And I think a part of that is realizing that your moments are going to have kind of like a bell curve. There's kind of some prep time to get up into it, and then you're going to have this amazing kind of peak in that moment, whatever that is, peak focus or peak communication, peak collaboration, and then it's going to wane off and then dip off, and you'll need some sort of recovery time to go with it. And what happens is we have these calendar clashes because we don't really know where our time is going to begin with, and then that leads to calendar crashes, and we're basically expecting ourselves to stay up the whole day, and we're not making time for prep or for recovery. And then that next moment gets sabotaged, and then the next work session gets harder to do, and so then it takes longer, which then bumps into the next commitment. And so we're dragging through all of these checkpoints in our day, and we're saying, man, I'm still recovering from work, so I can't be present with family. Or I was up just trying to recover from the day, so I stayed up too late, and then I sabotaged the next morning. And then everything is constantly shifting further and further back towards the past, towards the last time, the last moment. And it creates this repetition of procrastination, this pattern, this sustained pattern of procrastination, because we have to learn how to just literally hit the brakes. And even if you have to hit, uh, like Michael Scott thought he could just declare bankruptcy. I declare bankruptcy. It doesn't work that way. You have to actually hit the brakes, reset, rest. And I think the old school work approach was that we work a long time with short intentional intervals to break or to rest. And I think in kind of this new work environment, this new approach to productivity, we have to be figuring out ways to have very intentional short sprints of deep focus and meaningful collaboration. And then we'll have longer times of preparation and recovery and, by and large, downtime and or personal development, personal growth. Because I've learned that it's just as hard to have a effective work meeting with people as it is to have an effective deep work session with yourself. Those moments are few and far between. Those moments are fragmented. Man, just to get the right handful of people in the room once a week is like an Olympic feat these days. And here we are heralding, you know, the dawn of a new work era where everyone can be remote and we have so much connectivity and all this stuff. And yet we're more connected than ever, but it's more difficult to connect than ever. So we're going to have to learn how to be very intentional with the little bit of time that we have. Could you make a, let's say, 30-minute focus session really productive? How could you batch the work? How could you do pre-work? How could you get ahead and make 30 minutes or 90 minutes very effective? And you actually take a little bit of time to consider what that would look like and how you would make that a success. And, it's going to feel more like, to use a metaphor, to use a word picture, it'll be like an airplane ride where you have to go through some preparation just to get on the airplane. It takes a while to get on the airplane, but in the time you're in the air, you're actually going much, much further and faster than you could go on your own without it. So yeah, it takes some time to prepare, to do the legwork, to do the pre-work, to do the organizing and the scheduling and, to get the confirmations with all the other people. But when you have a really meaningful team moment and you have the right combination of working relationships and skill sets in the room, and they're actually present and you've actually prepared to have all of the right topics come up and the right decisions are being made and you're hitting it all together at the same time, man, you can go so much further, so much faster in a shorter amount of time than you could do by dragging it out days or weeks or months trying to manage a project that is disjointed, that's out of sync, that's incongruent, that's frustrating, that constantly needs to be updated because it's become more and more outdated over time. So this time budgeting thing is super valuable for people who want to make the most of the time they have. And once you stop the leaks, you know what's wasting your time, then you can repurpose that time for better uses. One of my ongoing goals is to get this content here on the coaching tighter and tighter. And so I've already talked about writing as a best strategy for self-leadership, and it's been working. I now have a new kind of growing conviction. I don't want to show up into any moment without having a written guide for me. And the same goes for not just presentations, but projects as well. So if I could, instead of saying, okay, I have an hour-long coaching show, coaching journey, video podcast, whatever this is, okay, could I take away, before you try to add more time to finish a goal, try to take time away from what you're already doing. Always try to simplify. Always try to subtract and prune. Always try to prune areas that are not as effective. They may be good, but maybe they're not totally great. Maybe they're not really productive. I think that's one of the gifts or one of the good contributions that this whole prioritization brought in. When people are talking about priorities and prioritize, the top 3 things that are really going well right now and identify the bottom 3 things that aren't really going that well now. And I mean, that helps you make choices, make decisions. So repurpose your time. Another thing is I've been reworking my morning routine. I want to start earlier. I want to get after things earlier. And by just making some minor adjustments, like I said, when you're driving on the road, you don't want to make big swerves on the road. That would be hazardous. That's not good. Whenever you see somebody making like really drastic changes in their lifestyle, other than, you know, following the Lord, but I mean, personally, practically making big changes, swerving lanes. That's not the strategy for sustainability. Making small adjustments. Normally, most times, more often, driving down the road looks like making smaller adjustments on the steering wheel. And that helps you get to your destination. So I'm making minor adjustments to the morning routine, and I'm finding new time that I didn't expect. I'm finding like at least an hour every morning that I didn't know I had before. And then I can reinvest that into this big goal. Let me know how you're feeling in the chat. I want to get you to an exercise now. Here is an exercise for you to try. When you're time budgeting a big goal, you want to see where there is excess, see where there is waste, deal with that first. Then you want to look for things that maybe are working, but you could take away some of that time for a season. It's just like if you're getting ready for Christmas, you're going to be making more purchases for the gifts. You might say, no, we're not going to go on that trip right now because we're making a trade-off. And you have to do that in my morning routine. I'm saying, okay, I'm going to shave off this 30 minutes or this hour so that way I can reinvest that into something that's going to help a big goal. But this is the exercise that I want you to really see on paper because this is going to help you. Whenever you can name that project, you got clear roles, you have clear goals attached to those roles. Then, when you have a clear goal, I want you to begin to describe it on paper on purpose. Describe the finished version of that project. Describe the finished version of that goal. And put your flag in the future. Michael Hyatt says, stand in the future and look back at a finished product. Say, man, this kind of takes some practice because you will say things like, I finished the book. It is awesome. It's actually 100 pages. I didn't realize that I could put graphics in color and it got printed here. And you're kind of like just imagining and identifying with the finished version. And what that's going to do is it's going to clarify the work you have to get done. And that's going to give you enough data to begin to outline that work in steps and stages. And that's where from the future back, you're going to kind of reverse engineer what are the steps, what are the stages that will get me to that finished product, right? You're saying it would need to have this, I would need to get this done. I need to, if this is true and if it got done by, let's say, the new year, then I would have to have that done before December 15. And if I needed that to be done by December 15, then I would need that to be done by December 1st. And you're already seeing a map become clarified. The steps and stages are already coming out. Instead, we're vague and we're overloaded and overcommitted and everything is just out of whack. But don't do that. So now when you're time budgeting for a goal, you're using the same skill set. It's the same skill set to estimate the time it would take. But now you're not doing it for a 24-hour day. Like I'm estimating I need X hours to sleep. I need X hours to do work, either based on the agreement of your job description or based on the hours that you're committed to, based on the work that you have to get done. And then I would have this amount of time with family, this amount of time eating, working out, whatever, right? That's a time budget. And then when all this other stuff starts popping up, you say, great, where does that fit in the time budget? How much time would I actually have to spend / invest on that project, that task? And if it doesn't fit, I mean, everything that I talk about now when I'm talking with my wife or my team or friends, and ideas come up in conversations, events come up in conversation, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, okay, where does that fit in my time budget? How am I doing with my time budget? Have I made enough buffer time for fun, unexpected things? Or do I have enough margin to handle the unexpected obligations? And so we're using the same time budgeting exercise, but instead of just looking at a 24-hour day, we're going to look at one goal. We're going to isolate one specific goal. We're going to look at all of the steps and stages that we can project right now, that we can imagine right now. And we're going to write it all down. And then on the side of each step or each stage, we're going to estimate how much time we think it would take. How much time do you think doing the graphics would take? How much time do you think going to the gym would take? How much time do you think whatever would take? And you're just getting, you're stress testing your own planning approach. You're trying to count the cost up front to make sure that you have enough time to work it all together. So you're going to estimate how much time. You describe the finished product. That'll help you reverse engineer steps and stages. And then on each step or stage, now you begin to guess. You give your best guess and you say, how much time would that take? And then you want to add a buffer line, a buffer category to this plan, because you have to admit that these are just guesses. And so you're guessing on how much time you would need to buffer. Okay, accuracy probably could be 5 hours off, could take 5 hours less, don't know. Could take a week more than I expect. And this is so helpful because the more you do this, you're building competence in this skill set, and then that's increasing your confidence to make better decisions in the future. Peter Drucker, kind of the grandfather of business management thinking, talked a lot about going back, revisiting previous decisions you've already made to see how you did, and essentially grow your acumen, your IQ, your EQ, your intuition, and to see how you did, and then make course corrections on this self-leadership level. Now, then, when you have these estimates, you add up all that time. You say, okay, my best guess says this whole project would take me X amount of hours. And it might be in the dozens, it might be in the hundreds. I don't know. It would take me, and I think it's good to, stages might take days or weeks, but steps hopefully will take, minutes or hours. And that's what you're trying to do, is break it down into something that you can measure, where you can actually do the future math and give yourself a number, a real number. It's your best guess, but it's real. It's a real number. This thing will take me about 70 hours. Okay, I'm imagining this will take, with all my experience, I'm thinking 70 hours, I can knock this out. That's with a, margin. I've added in a little bit of buffer time for me. Okay, now you have to figure out where and how you're going to fit 70 hours back into your schedule, back into that weekly planning session or that monthly planning session. And that's why I don't try to reinvent the wheel every week. I don't come into the weekly planning session and start over and try to rebuild my life, although that is super fun to do. I don't want to have like a different schedule every week. I'd rather have something more of a rhythm to my life, have a little bit more of a blueprint approach, because I don't want to just be spending all this time reinventing the wheel. So what I already know about this season of my life is I have work 1 in the morning, and then I have work 2 in the afternoon, and I know how many hours are available in work 1, how many hours are available in work 2. I've already budgeted the time to do this, prepare to go there. I've already budgeted the time to do my work. I've already budgeted the time to have my weekly team meeting and my daily stand-ups. I've already budgeted the time for the phone calls that come in. I've already budgeted my time to do the morning routine, the evening routine. I've already budgeted all that out. So that stuff's already out. Now, with the margin that I have left, I have to fit in this goal. I have to fit in this goal, and I need to find 70 hours over the next 14 weeks, or I need to put 70 hours in the next 4 weeks. Now you can see where the game comes in now, right? You see how the game is played. Because if you have a lot of time and you only need to find 70 hours, and I mean, I'm getting into math world here, but I don't know where my laptop or where my phone went. But basically, you start doing the math, you have to find, for this case study, 70 hours to do this project, and you have to fit it in where you already have big rocks and time blocks, and that's where you're making your decisions. And you create time blocks. You're not going to get all 70 hours at once. It won't happen that way unless you do some sort of offsite and you do some sort of retreat, which is effective. But even then, I don't know that you can really bank on that for everything. Now, let's say you're going to break down the 70 hours into, think of that. If you did 7 weeks, if you had 7 weeks and you put 10 hours a week in, you'd need about 2 hours on weekdays. You see how this actually becomes more clarified? That becomes the game. I have to sustainably show up 2 hours every weekday for 7 weeks to get to my big goal. And I know the steps and I know the stages to get there. This is pretty powerful, y'all. Pretty good. So it's really not about some Herculean accomplishment, just brute willpower, brute force. I know that there are people and their whole value is hustle culture. That's great. I think you go through seasons where you're sprinting, but you have to have recovery time. You have to be sustainable. You have to build up for those sprints, and then you have to give yourself time for rest and renewal, and then more training. And all of this becomes lessons learned and experience earned for your next 90-day cycle. And so you're getting sharper, you're learning, you're failing forward sometimes, but you're staying encouraged. And I think time budgeting is a very helpful tool for people that know how to use it well. It's not going to be official. It's not going to be automatic. It's not like, well, my time budget said it was all good, so this is exactly how it's going to happen. It's kind of like the weather, I don't know how they still, kind of miss it here and there, but it's just projecting models. It's not like it's actually going to or have to happen that way. But you have to go through this regardless. You have to go through these steps because this is your own intentionality that's being developed. Otherwise, what's going to happen is you're just going to throw your hands up. You're going to say, it's never possible. It can't be done. I'm too busy. I'm overcommitted. I'm overextended. And then you keep settling time after time after time after time. And you basically wasted 70 weeks for something in this case study that only required 70 hours. That's kind of what's happening in this case study. Let's say this project is going to take you about 70 hours to do. If you don't know that, and if you're not just working this plan, you could waste, and this happens. It's like Interstellar. You think it's a short trip to the other planet, you come back and you're like, where did all that time go? What happened? Okay. You could waste more time if you don't invest time wisely. Don't waste time, invest it wisely. If you work this out, even if it took you 100 hours, you could say, wow, I still see a path forward. I still see a way to make this happen. And I think what happens more often is we don't clarify what the finished version of this goal actually is. We're not making it realistic. We're not making it personal. And then we're not committing to the steps and stages to get there. And then we're not taking action where we can. So I really appreciate you being on this coaching round today. I want to try to finish with your own feedback or questions. I don't do this every time, but I just think this is a good conversation for something like this. Let me know in the chat. Does this make you feel empowered? Does this make you feel frustrated? Let me know if you're ready to try this, or if you still have objections. Let me know what those objections might be. And yesterday was all about using a time budget on a 24-hour day and seeing, does your normal routine life just make sense? And really it was about identifying waste. But now we're going to push forward on accomplishing big goals. So we're going to use the same time budget tool, and we're going to focus on one goal at a time. We're going to describe the finished version in the future. That'll help us get enough data to make good, educated decisions about the steps and stages needed. We're going to estimate the best we can on those in hours. And then we're going to add them all up, see what that grand total is, and then try to find ways, like a suitcase. You're trying to get all this stuff to fit into the exact container that you have available. If your suitcase can only handle 24 hours in a day, how are you going to fit 70 hours worth of work into a 24-hour day? And oh yeah, it's not really 24 hours totally, because you've already budgeted in all that other stuff that's happening. So really, when you boil it all down, you might only have 2 or 1 or 30 minutes for this project to begin with a day. Or you may say, hey, I can't work on this project every day, but I feel confident that I could put in about 2 to 3 hours a week on this goal. Great. Well, then organize it that way. But I think it's really helpful when you can quantify the outcomes and you say, this is what it looks like. This is what it's going to take. Now, how do we fit it into that schedule? Very good. Thank y'all for being on. I want to invite you, if this resonates with you, join our email community. Be a part of the Future Friends. I send out an email once a week on Fridays. You get all this coaching content bundled up. And I want to remind you, I'm here for you. I appreciate you. I want to keep you encouraged, keep you going. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about how do you use time budgeting for your team. And this is really going to be useful when we talked about calendar clashes lead to calendar crashes. More time is wasted because our team is not in sync. And so there's a lot of miscommunication and a lot of overlaps and a lot of gaps. Overlaps are where people are doing the same work. So now there's double work and then you're basically wasting. There's some inefficiency there. Gaps are where nobody's doing the work. Nobody's catching that. And that creates a crack. Things are falling through the cracks. Where and how can we get the team to be more cohesive, work together, so that way we can move further faster as a team? We're going to be talking about putting your team on the fast track with time budgeting and give you some really specific ideas to start implementing this as soon as possible. All right. Remember, you're going places. And if you believe that, go ahead and put in the work today and tomorrow and every day, because when we show up, we want to show up ready. Keep it up and prepare to go there.
In 1,000 feet, use the right 2 lanes